So running on referrals is like being in a bit of a prison, and the reason why is that referrals, all like as good as referrals are, right? That we're taking referrals, for example, as good as these are, and I mean even inbound leads, for example, the problem is that you have no control over when or how many referrals you're going to be getting for your business. Meaning that if that's what you purely rely on, it means that every week that passes by, you're never really going to know what's coming through. You never have control of what's coming through. Now, the thing is the whole idea of referrals is this very nice idea that, hey, all you're simply doing is you're simply, delivering for the sort of the clients that you have. And naturally, you just magically get referrals and you never have to worry about, really having to market yourself because they just come through. And, I speak with a lot of coaches that are in that position, and that's a great position to be in. However, the problem is that if the referrals become inconsistent, which I hear a lot of coaches say that, referrals and such just become quite inconsistent, some months are great, other months not so much, then this needs to change, right? This needs to change. You can't just keep relying on referrals. So what do you need? So in my opinion, what you need is you need a system. Now I apologize for my handwriting, but this is the rubbish as it gets. So you need a system, right? And you need a system that is proven and a system that's going to give you the consistent results. Now, at the end of the day, if you're trying to get more of a consistent lead generation coming through, you need to have something that you can control, right? So for me, when I'm thinking of LinkedIn, right, because obviously LinkedIn is my sort of lead generation source, doesn't have to be yours, but it's mine. I'm thinking of LinkedIn. Sure, I mean, if you're familiar with LinkedIn, you probably heard you need to, optimize your profile, you need to post content, and then maybe you also heard that you also need to do some outreach as well. And all this is well and good as well. The only problem is that other than the profile which you'd optimize probably once or twice, and that would be that, you don't have any control over the content, right? You don't like you don't have any control over who sees your content, right? And this is another thing, right? I'll see some people that will, say they're actually doing stuff for lead generation when actually in reality all they're doing is simply posting content. And I think posting content is great, right? Because it gives you the how to build authority. But the problem is yet again, you're not in control of this, right? You are not in control of this, the algorithm is. So you're not in control of who sees it, how many people see it. And a lot of the time, I hear a lot of coaches that don't really get great results from content anyway. And so it's more of just a post and pray strategy as opposed to something strategic. And so, all that really leaves here is an outreach, right? Because outreach for me is something which you have the most control over. And the reason being is that you're able to specifically reach out to certain individuals, right? You can reach out to certain individuals that mark as, say, your ideal client. What you're able to do as well is you're also able to reach out to a certain number of them, for example. So, for example, for me, let's say I'm just focusing on warm outreach. If I'm just messaging all my warm leads, so people that I'll say are my connections, say profile viewers and such, then, I might sort of manage maybe 20 to 25 warmer leads in the week, right? Obviously, for me, I want to send as much as possible, but on average, I usually tend to send around maybe 25 warm messages a week. And what this does is that assuming that the people I'm connecting with are qualified and are people that are ideal, which for me, the main way make sure that these people are qualified is I use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which if you're not familiar with, all it helps you do is create a very specific list of your ideal client. This could be filtering for when they were recently active on LinkedIn, how long they've been in their business, the type of industry, the job role, so on and so forth, right? So this is really, really crucial. And I find if you can take this and you can send connection requests. So for me, this might be sending maybe like 20 connections a day through that list. Then I know everyone that is becoming a new connection, is someone that I have, effectively, sent connection requests to. Now, honestly, sending connection requests takes maybe 5, 7 minutes at most, like every day. But at the end of the day, these are the warmer people that are going to be familiar with you. And if you can turn one of these into a client every month, you'd probably be pretty happy with that. So obviously with this process, you send the connection request, you actually get people, seeing you, being familiar with you. And then really from there, it is then doing that outreach, right? Reaching out to the people that are familiar to you. We're not doing spam, we're not doing cold outreach. not doing any AI automations. We're just trying to send those messages to people that are familiar to us. Now, when it comes to sending those messages, right, we want to do two things. The first thing is we want to make sure that these messages are personalized. The reason why I want to make these messages personalized is because, we obviously, especially with a lot of AI stuff going out there, you want the person, the receiver, to actually feel like this message was sent to them specifically and that you actually went out of your way to take a few minutes to literally say, maybe, I don't know, look at their recent posts and, make a genuine compliment about it or something genuine about it and something specific, right? So that at least, basically, I suppose it gives you a better perceived look in the fact that you've taken that time. The second thing is then you want to ask a qualifying question. Now, the reason I say this is a lot of the time when, like perhaps when you've done outreach before, you try to start a conversation where you don't want to be too salesy, you don't want to, bring up business stuff too much. You want to at least maybe like perhaps establish a relationship before you get into it. The problem is that if you start the conversation, you ask a question which is pretty broad, like, I don't know, how's business or, how are you or, those sort of things, you're gonna get broad responses, right? That's sort of the truth of it, right? You're gonna get broad responses. And so the better thing to do here is to be more direct. Because let's be honest, whenever you get a message from someone on LinkedIn, chances are you have a general idea of why they're messaging you, which a lot of the time will probably be because, they want something from you, or just simply, perhaps they're reaching out because, like they effectively want to, as an end goal, perhaps, sell you on their service, for example. So it doesn't matter which route, like it doesn't matter which route you take, it really just matters around, are you going to sort of have, a very sort of back and forth casual conversation, like between you, back and forth that goes really, really long. And then somewhere at the bottom here, you then actually bring up, your sort of service or start asking qualifying questions. Because the only problem with this is I do understand, okay, you're warming things up, but, if you're only gonna warm things up and build a fake relationship before you get to the point, it's just a bit disrespectful. So what I find works better is lead with the qualifying question, right? Lead with, exactly why you're there for. Because yes, you will get ghosted by some people. Yes, some people might make the odd sort of, unnecessary comment. But at the same time, you'll also get people that, accept that connection request because they were considering working with you or at least realize that you help people like them, and so you can then ask that qualifying question and you can start identifying if they have a problem you can solve or not. So, for example, for me, right, this could be something along the lines of me asking how someone's LinkedIn lead generation is going along, right? I can ask them that question. Obviously, I had personalization at the start, but then I'd ask that question. And, from that, obviously, there's a few responses. I can either get ghosted, I can either, get a perhaps maybe nasty comment, which sometimes I do, and at the end of the day, it's just business. However, a good bit of the time, I can also get people that actually do, sort of perhaps open up a bit. Sometimes, like some people will open up fully and say, "Yeah, I need help with this." Other time, they'll have people that open up slightly, and then from there, all you're trying to do is ask those you further questions to try and get them to open up. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to pitch my offer or at least propose a call to chat further if I'm not certain that there is a problem that I can solve. That's the sort of rule I stick by. So if I can obviously send a personalized message and send a qualifying question, the moment they then open up about having that problem is the exact moment when I'm going to effectively sort of propose a call, right? Because at the end of the day, like you don't need to have a massive back and forth conversation because a lot of the questions that you might want to perhaps ask a bit further, you'd probably ask on the sales call anyway. So this is just a nice, simple way of you send connections to the ideal clients. You then you then start the conversation with those warmer leads, so people that accept the connection request, profile viewers. You're then sending a personalized message or starting it personalized and then finishing it with a qualifying question. Make sure this isn't like a massive thing, right? Can't try and keep this as sort of short and compact as possible. And then obviously one of those three things are going to happen. You'll get ghosted, which if you get ghosted, you can probably follow up if you if it's ideal. If it's a nasty comment, just ignore them. But if people open up, whether it be they open up fully or partly, then all you want to do is start asking questions until they open up, or at least until you're confident they have a problem you can solve, and then you propose that sales call. Because at the end of the day, this is going to give you control over your lead generation, right? And like I mentioned before, referrals are great, right? Referrals are great. Don't get me wrong, right? This video isn't about saying referrals aren't great or inbounds either. The thing is that lead generation, if you feel like you have some a level of control with lead generation. Now, I'm not saying full control, but if I'm saying you have some level of control where, for example, you can send maybe 20 sort of like warm messages a week, for example, you're going to have a pretty good idea, based on your sort of like assuming you're tracking it to some level in terms of how many of those messages are likely to turn into a book call, right? So, for example, if I'm sending, say, 25 warm messages a week, I can at least have some form of an idea that at least maybe one or two of those are going to book into, a sales call, right? And if you times that by four in terms of obviously the whole month, then I'm looking at probably a minimum of four sales calls a month, but maybe, up of a maximum until like 10, right? So for example, with me, for January, I booked 7 sales calls, and for February, I actually booked 9. So, with that, it's like, okay, well, I was able to use those numbers to then adjust in terms of what I was getting. So overall, this is pretty much the whole message I was trying to get across in the sense that it's like, referrals as good as they are, you do want to have, well, or at least if you do want control over your lead generation, you do want to scale from where you are predictably, then having the right system in place is really, really crucial. Now, if this is something you're open to actually getting help with, and perhaps it's something you want to actually outsource, then you can actually visit my website to learn more. But that being said, I hope you found this useful, and I'll chat soon.